y'all doing this evening? It used to be evening when I started this way, but it's morning now. So good morning to everybody. Give you just a little brief history of my connection to the cattle business. I raised on a little small cotton farm in northeast Alabama out on Lookout Mountain by my grandfather and my mother. And when I got my first check from RCA in 1980, I knew immediately I didn't want to raise cotton. I'd done that too much when I was growing up. So I asked my wife, I said, what should I do with this money we've got here? And she said, won't you buy your grandfather's old farm? So I went to my grandfather, and he said he would be happy to sell it to me, and that's kind of what got me into having starting with a little small piece of 60 acres there in northeast Alabama. I didn't know one end of a cow from the other at that time. I'd never been raised around cattle. So me and Randy, Owen, my cousin, we went over to some neighbors and bought some Hereford, some polled Herefords to start with. It was our first cattle on our farm. And both of my children, Josh and Sally, they both showed there for a couple of years in the junior shows. And I'd take these Hereford back home and put them out in the pasture, and they didn't seem to want to giddy up and go. They had too much hair. Hereford and Angus cattle really weren't designed to work in the South, especially on fescue. So about 3 years into it, about 83, I decided I needed to learn something about cows if I was going to be in the cow business. So I started studying. I started reading all the books I could get my hands on. And the back of the bus looked like an ag school. It was all my papers and books were spread out. So I started reading and trying to educate myself. And when I got around to looking at tenderness on beef animals, I'm not here to blast or talk bad about any breeds, but I'm very honest about what data tells us. And so for years we had used Brahma to make Hereford and Angus, Brangus and Brayford, so that the Hereford and Angus would be heat tolerant and be able to stand the heat and humidity from here south. But every time Brahma touches the mix, you'd see the quality of the meat go down. The shear force, all the university shear force tests would be tougher, way tougher than normal. So I told my wife one night at the supper table, I said, we don't have the right tools in our toolbox to raise beef here in the South that can compete with northern beef or straight Hereford and Angus. So we started down the road about 86. I had found a breed in the Virgin Islands called Centipole that in one generation would slick red Angus. The calves, the mama could be hairy and breed them to a Centipole bull, and the calves would be slick. So I was looking for another breed, and Frank Felton in Missouri introduced me to a breed called the Barzona. Barzonas were a composite breed put together by the Bard family in Arizona back in the 40s and 50s, and they're called the Hardy breed. And out there, if you've ever been to Phoenix, Arizona, you'll see why they call them Hardy, because it don't look like a cow could hardly make a living out there. But the Barzonas are a tremendous breed. The Bard family had the same problem I did. They had Hereford and Angus that weren't adapted to their environment, so they went to the King Ranch. And they got some Afghaner bulls, which were non-Brahman African bulls, same breed that was used to make the Bonsmar cattle, and Jan Bonsmar used from the same gene pool. They brought those in and crossed them on the Hereford and Angus, and a couple of years later, I think they may have used a couple of Santa Gertrudis bulls, which has a touch of Brahma in it. But by the time you get down into the Barzonas they brought a lot of things to the table when we crossed them on our Herefords. they had a little bit of spirit to them because they were raised out there, had to protect their calves out there in the wild. But the Barzonas, we got a lot of good things. We got small calves, we got tight udders, we got longevity. So we wound up crossing Barzona on Hereford, Centipole on Red Angus, and then we crossed those two F1s back together, and we came up with the name South Pole. To start with, in the early 90s when the first South Poles were hitting the ground, all we had was a hybrid. We should have stamped on the side of it, do not reproduce. It's like the bag of seed corn. It says on there, don't keep this seed corn because if it's a hybrid seed, it's not going to give you what you put in. You can only do that through a narrowing your genetic base down or what's called line breeding. So it took us about, from the experts, what I've read, it takes a dozen or more generations of line breeding to purify a strand or get it so that you're going to get out exactly what you put in. And we're not quite there yet on the South Pole. We still have some second, third, fourth, fifth generation cattle. But the further we go now, the more we're getting so that the same grandma, the old grandma that was the right size cow, will appear in that pedigree. So we're line breeding it. We have to line breed to get predictability and uniformity down the road. But let's talk about what is the ideal cow for the South. I was thinking yesterday, I was coming down the road and I heard them talking about it. They said next year, the United States will produce 2 billion pounds of less beef than what we've been producing. So what does this mean? They're talking about, well, the meat's going up. There's a number of reasons why our production is going down. Droughts, of course, we've had some droughts. We've had flooding. The weather's bad. But I think the number one thing is probably we've got our cows so big and so inefficient that people are, I saw a figure that said the average beef cow in the United States produces like 4.5 calves. That's what's wrong with our cattle business. We need cattle that can live to be 15, 16, 17, 18 years old and still produce. Still give us a calf every year. A cow that's adapted to her environment. I talk about adaptability. I was raised in the South Pole. Unless a cow is adapted to her environment, it don't matter what the paper says on her, what her EPD says. If she's not in tune with her environment, then what happens? The black cows, I'll use that for an example. I got neighbors that have black cows. I have nothing against Angus cattle, except they're not supposed to be in the South. But once July gets here and it gets 95, 100 degrees, those Angus cows are going to be standing in the pond with their nose sticking out or trying to make a shade somewhere under a tree, and they suffer. The first thing that goes is production, milk production. They cut back on their milk, and the calf is he's not quite as shiny as he was. And then she's also not cycling. If she's stressed, she's not cycling. She's not going to breed back. And through EPDs, we've got our cattle bigger and bigger and bigger. Everybody thinks that 150 was good on yearling weight. 200 must be better. No way. What happens is you get too much size in your cow herd. They become very inefficient. You have to feed them more. All our data that we've researched over the years plainly tells us that from depending on your environment and your management and your available nutrition and your grasses, somewhere between 900 and 1,100 pound cow that's about a frame 2.5, got a lot of belly and guts to her so that she can gain weight and prosper on good grass when she gets it in the spring. A cow that don't have the guts to do that, if she's narrow-gutted, then she's never going to do what you need her to do. Also, our mama cows need to be easy fattening. Real lean breeds don't work well as mama cows on a cow-calf operation. You need a cow that's, once spring flush comes, she's able to not only raise the calf, breed back on time, she can raise a good calf and slicks off and does well and gains weight during that period of time. But we need in the South, for the cow-calf producer, steers are a byproduct of a maternal program. Steers are not what you can base where I'm making money or losing money on steers if you're running a cow-calf operation. The female is the female is the gold mine in a maternal operation or in a cow-calf operation. We always breed for our females is that I want, in my environment, about 1,000-pound cow, 1,000 to 1,050-pound cow is ideal in my environment. She slicks off early, she gets bred early, and then fertility and longevity, I've preached this for the last 25 years, if you've ever come and heard me talk anywhere. Fertility and longevity are the money makers for the cow-calf operator. It's worth repeating. Fertility and longevity are the money makers for the cow-calf operation. It's not EPDs. It's not carcass, big ribeyes. It's not how much. All of that should balance out and take care of itself in a maternal. If we keep the cows that calve early every year in our season, we have South Pole breeders that have several hundred cows that are getting 96, 97% breed up across the board on heifers, cows. That's what we got to have. That's the fertility we got to have in these cattle. That a calf every year within that calving window, less than 365 days, and do it year after year after year. To do that, the 1,000-pound cow is the most profitable when looked at as what a percentage of body weight that she wean off. She'll wean off approximately over 10-year period. She'll wean off right at 45 to 50% of her body weight. Some of them will do a little better than that. But if we get too much milk, it affects fertility again. Anything that affects fertility, where it's ribeye size being too big, where they're giving too much milk, and the number one thing is udder. We got to have a cow that the udder lasts longer than the cow. Otherwise, what happens? If a 2-year-old blows out her udder, she's gone. If a 6-year-old blows out her udder, she's gone. We can't afford to be out there trying to get a calf, trying to milk a teat down that's too big. You don't have time for that. Maybe you do, but I don't. So don't put crutches under these cattle. If they need to have a great udder to start with. I use the example of if you got two 1,500-pound cows, and I've got three 1,000-pound cows, at the end of the year, it's incredible how much more money after a 10-year period that you'd make off of the three smaller cows. First of all, you lose about 2% in fertility for every 100 pounds of body weight you go above 1,000 pounds. In other words, there's 10% breed-up difference between a 1,000-pound cow and a 1,500-pound cow. The 1,500-pound cow has more body to maintenance. She's going to be a little bit later cycling. This year and next year, if she has a big old bull calf, pulls her down a little bit, she's going to be even later cycling. So the big cows are really a detriment in size to profitability. What we need, we're trying to build a maternal index instead of having EPDs. I don't have anything against EPDs, except most people misuse them. But they got to have small birth weights. We have steered early years ago when we first started the South Pole breed. We steered anything that was over 80 pounds, and then about 5 years later, we started steering anything that was over 75 pounds. So now then, our calves average about 45 to 60 pounds. And I'll speak about how you treat your heifers right now. It's very important. If you're going to calve at 2 years old, when you wean those heifer calves, if you wean them, we leave our calves on till about a month and a half before the cows calve again. So a lot of times those calves will be 9, 10 months old, have went through the winter on their mother. But when you do wean those heifer calves off, they need to continue growing. They need to be gaining a pound and a quarter. The good ones will be a pound and a half a day in order to be big enough for you to breed them to calve at 2 years old. If you kick them out on some old rank hay and those heifers are just kind of sitting there, they're not gaining any weight, maybe they're just maintaining, then you shouldn't expect those heifers to calve at 2 years old and get bred. So you got to take a little bit of care. I tell people if you'll take a couple $100 and put it into some alfalfa pellets or some good hay or something, and when those heifers are weaned, and keep them gaining, then they're going to be ready to breed at 14, 15 months old and be calving as 2-year-olds. Our 2-year-olds, they need to be quick growing. They need to be a cow at 2 years old. We don't put any special. We don't separate them from the cow herd. They calve with the cows. They're in with the cows. The 2-year-old should look like a cow body-wise at 2 years old. They don't need to be gutted up when they calve and say, well, I need to pull them out and give them some extra nutrition at 2 years old. If you do, you've got too much growth in your herd. So this ideal cow we're talking about, if I could describe her, she'd be light-colored for the South. She'd weigh somewhere between 900 and 1,100 pounds. The reason I if you're on Bahia grass in Florida, it's one of the lowest nutrition, Bahia, Bermuda grass, that's about all they can grow down there, then your nutrition level is not going to be what it is around here where we got some clovers and some orchard grass and some other stuff. So that cow's going to be, she needs to be extremely small in stature, but extremely big around her gut. Her heart girth is the most probably of all the measurements that we used to take and linear measurements. Heart girth, I still believe for the South, and especially when you get into Bermuda and Bahia grass, is the most important measurement because a cow's got to have the ability to eat a bunch of low-quality forage and still do her job. So she needs to be slick-haired, which means that coming out of wintertime, if they have a little fuzzy hair coming out of wintertime, by the time it gets in the 90 degrees, they need to have slicked off. Otherwise, they're stressed in their environment, and they're going to never do what a cow needs to do. Second of all, they need to be gentle. A wild cow cannot eat good. They'll be tough. Several universities have proven this, where they would take and run the steers through, and the steers that they would put up a electric eye some distance away from the head chute, and they would open the head chute, and the timer would time the amount of time it took these animals to cross over, say 15 feet out from the chute. And the ones that hurried through were always at the low end of the tenderness, and the ones that walked through were always at the top end of the tenderness. So we need gentleness, not just for working these cattle. If you got kids, I got great grandkids now. That's how old I am. Gee, man, I got 6 of them. But if you got kids and grandkids and you want them to be around the animals, you want them to be gentle. So we've went to great lengths to keep the gentleness in the South Pole breed. But every what breed you have for a cow-calf operation, they need to be gentle. So they're easy to work. They're not bouncing off the wall. And then they need to have a good udder. The very first thing at the top of the list is when I go look for a bull or go look to buy a bull, it may be the neighbors or something, what you should do is go look at the mama, the sisters, the grandma, because you can't tell a lot by looking at this bull. If you're looking for maternal cattle, You got to go to the mamas. You got to go to the mamas that raise the babies, and look at them. If that's the ideal size calf, if his mama's the ideal size cow, if she's 15 years old and has had 14 calves, she is the right kind. I don't care what anybody else says. She's the right kind. She's a money maker. But let's get off the fact of trying to pick the biggest, widest, longest. The purebred industry seems to have to have something to promote. Well, he's got the biggest ribeye. He's got the most marbling. He's the longest bull I've ever saw. He's the tallest bull I've ever saw. He's, you can anytime you go for an extreme in anything, you suffer someplace else for it. So I need the best average calf I've got. Now you think about that a minute. You go out. Most people, if I walk up to them and said, "I want to buy the best average calf you got," they look at me like I got four eyes. Because it don't, but that's the one that gives you the least problems. It's got the best mama. She's got the best udder. He's big enough. Again, growth. Anybody can get growth. If I want real growth, I'll get into the elephant business. But otherwise, I'm trying to make money with these cows. And making a profit means that cow doing what I talked about a while ago. If our average beef cow in this country is producing 4.5 calves, we can double that with South Pole pretty easy in the next few years. We can kick that up to 10 or 11 calves a cow. I guarantee it if we take care of them. The next thing is it all has to work together. I found out as the years went by that if we didn't have healthy soil, earthworms and dung beetles and everything working there, very alive in the soil, it's impossible for your grasses to be healthy. So it all works together: healthy soil, healthy grasses, healthy cattle. And if you can put all those things together, then you have a chance of making it in the cattle business. But you got to have the right tools to do the job with. 1,500-pound cows, boys, are not going to get it done. I can show you at the end of the year where you lose money on her. I don't care if she does calve in season every year. To me, it's impossible over a long period of time for her to wean off 750 pounds of calf every year without her backing up on her breeding schedule. Anything that interferes with fertility and longevity, we don't need it in the cow-calf operator. And most of the time, we've found that those cows that do it every year, those daughters that come out of those cows, the more line bred you get your herd, then the better it is for predictability and longevity down the road. But we had a cow here the other day, was 21 years old. Dave called me and said, I didn't think she was pregnant since she had a calf. And he had her separated off, and she was not happy, and the calf wasn't happy. We put them back in the herd, and everybody's fine now. So, anyway, but I love those old cows. I love stacking those old cows in our pedigrees because to me, that's just an insurance policy down the road. Longevity has got to win out. Okay, I'll take some questions. Yes, sir. How to market these cattle? Well, like I said earlier, the gold mine is the females. The females will sell themselves. All you got to do is let neighbors know or put it on the website. We have more demand for these females than we have females, and should have for the next 10 years. The females should not be a problem to merchandise. They just had a little sale on field day over in Virginia, and I think they averaged about 3,000 head, 3,200 head, which bred heifers. If they're going to be in your herd for 15, 18 years and produce every year, they're worth a premium. You buy one that the udder goes out on at 3 years old and see how much you've lost on her. I heard somewhere that it takes about 5 or 6 calves to break even on a cow. And then after that, you start making money. If that be true, then it's no mystery why a lot of the cattle people in America are losing money, because if 4.5 calves is the average what the beef cow is producing, then they haven't even approached breaking even on that cow at that point. So we've got to get our eye on the ball of what are we trying to do as a cow-calf operator. Fertility and longevity. Forget all that other BS out there. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's, and I've lived through EPDs all my life, and I don't have anything against EPDs if they're used in the right way. But when we try to maximize growth in our cow herd, it may work for the steers, selling the steers. By the way, on the steers, even though they're a byproduct of the South Pole, if you can get locked into somebody that has a quality meat program, the meat on South Pole is wonderful. We just if you look on the University of Florida, had a taste test where they have trained people that come in last year, and they had all the breed crosses from Devon to Wagyu, Angus, all of them. South Pole won the whole deal in a blind taste test. So we're not concerned. Our meat's okay. We don't have to go out there and try to start trying to maximize the carcass quality or maximize the ribeye size. Mother Nature will layer in there where she wants to be. An inch of per hundredweight up to about 1.2 looks like to me, as far as on our cattle. The cattle are still fertile and do a good job. But if you can get hooked in with somebody that grazes steers, or you can retain ownership of them through a meat program of some kind, or if you have to, you're still going to make money if you haven't sell them at the sale barn, the steers, because the females, if they're bringing twice what a female is at the stock barn, then, like I said, the steers are a byproduct of maternal program. Get all you can out of them. You want to get all you can out of them. But if you have to turn around and sell them at the sale barn, you're still going to make money on the females. Okay, any more questions? Yes. Our calving season is, I like to have all my calves come, if I could, the first week of April. If all of them would fall in that week, that'd be perfect. But we stretch them out the whole month of April. Most time, by the end of April, we're 90% through calving in 30 days. Yes?
On the bull cow, can it be related or not related to the mommy cow that you're going to use for breeding stock?
Can the bull be related? Yeah, I don't like using what I call inbreeding, which would be a son back to his mom. The kind of rule of thumb I use is I don't like to get more than 50% of any one animal's blood in that calf, which means that if the grandma, all four grandmas on a calf is the same cow, you've got 50% of that grandma's blood in there. And if she's a great cow and the most perfect cow and done everything you ask her to do, that's how I like to line breed, is skip a generation so that you don't directly inbreed, I call it. But some of the best, some of the great ones over time have come from sire-daughter matings. Becton had a bull that was a sire-daughter mating with an accident. He turned B532, I think, but he was one of the top bulls they ever raised. But Mother Nature, again, you'll probably get more dinks by inbreeding, though, than you will great ones. Yeah, I think, like I said, about 50% to me, and there may be some people that will argue with that you can get more, but I'm no expert. But that's kind of the rule of thumb I try to go by, is not to get maybe more than 50% of any one animal's blood.
Okay, so 2 questions. You want to breed between the 900 and 1100 is the ideal breeding, and then they gain weight, and then that way they wean back off to about 1,000 pounds, is what you're saying, on the mamas.
On the mama cow?
Yeah. So like you want to breed them at around 1,000 pounds, and then when they wean off, they're right back at that 1,000 pounds.
Well, we turn bulls out the hottest month of the year. We turn our bulls out to breed around the 1st of July. To the first week of July. And those cows at that point should be pretty much at maximum weight. The cow she should be She's calved. She's had 60, 70 days to put on some weight after she calves. She should be cycling again. But the calves, the first calf heifers should be should be weighing about 60% of their mature weight when we breed them. In other words, those first calf heifers, the weaned heifers, if they're going to be 1,000-pound cow, they need to be weighing about 600 pounds before we turn bulls out with them, 6 to 650.
Okay, and then the only other question was, once the heifers get up to that ideal weight where you're saying you may have to do alfalfa pellets or whatever, they're fine on grass? Mamas are fine on just grass?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Our cows should be, they should be performing off of what grass you got available to them. I have neighbors around home that don't believe in having grass. They have cows, but they don't have any grass. But for a cow to express her genetic potential, you need grass in front of them. A cow's going to eat her weight about every 30 days in something, as rude. I mean, some a little more, some a little less, but whether that's hay or grass or whatever what it is. But in our environment, we need about 3.5 acres of good grass to run a 1,000-pound cow on a year-round basis. So if you got more than that, you're shorting the cow somewhere, and it's going to cost you either having to go out and buy supplemental hay or whatever. But if you got 3.5 to 4 acres of good grass, you should be able to go all year round and have some winter stockpile as well. Yes.
What are your thoughts on bottle feeding a rejected calf?
I'm sorry?
Your thoughts on bottle feeding a rejected calf? The mom completely rejected it.
Well, if you got time, to bottle feed a calf, that's good. But I found too that if you have a problem, most time you should get rid of it instead of keep it, because we had a cow one year that calved and she wouldn't accept the calf. We went out, me and my wife went out it was storming and raining, and she'd catch that calf with her nose and knock it about 10 feet down. So me and my wife got it, took it back, dried it off. Took it back out the next morning, and she come walking up and took it just like, "Where you been?" Well, one of my neighbors said it was probably the weather, so the lightning and storm and everything. So we kept the cow. The next year, I swear she done the exact same thing when she calved again. And that time we shipped her. She had something off in the head, but. Yes, we rotate our cattle every 24 hours, or even more often if we're there and we can. I had a guy come through from New Zealand about '87, Keith Pemberton. Keith showed me pictures of them rotational grazing in New Zealand, and so I kind of got hooked on it at that time. And we did it wrong for. First year, I nearly killed all my cows and killed all my grass too, but you get into it and you kind of learn as you go, and then you learn that, to take care of my grass, I got to leave some grass behind, and to do that, then, but yeah, we leave more behind than our neighbors have to start with, on some of them, but it's important. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for all your information. We really appreciate you being out here. And we're in Oklahoma, so the question is, A, where do we get the South Pole? B, is it going to handle the Oklahoma winter where it gets below zero for maybe 1 to 2 weeks out of the year, a little bit of snow? And 3, how would we maintain a breeding stock? So it's all kind of the same thing for our region.
We have several breeders in Oklahoma. And if you get on the South Pole website, you can find out breeders that are in your area. And we have people in Minnesota that have South Pole. They're crazy, but, but they like the cattle good enough. And these cattle will adapt, but some of them will grow more hair than others, too. And the longer they're in a cold winter environment, the more hair they'll grow in the wintertime. Mother Nature kind of takes over and their hormones, and so they automatically will grow more hair. But if it's some of these cattle in South Pole have they are homozygous for the slick hair gene. it goes back to the Centipole breed. And those animals, they won't grow hair in the wintertime at all, so they don't need to go into the northern climates. But it's very easy to go into other people's herd, and I would pick the cow in the wintertime probably, is go in there and the ones that have a little hair on them, but back fat is as important. Conditioning is almost as important as hair for keeping them warm in the wintertime. If they're in good condition, people don't seem to have any problem with them standing in the cold weather, even though they weren't designed for that. And I don't recommend people take them up north. We need to develop a North Pole for them, I guess.
Hi. You were talking about efficiency. So in your herd, you keep your own bulls, I take it, of different genetics?
Yes,
line?
keeping your own breeding stock. I think if you've got 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 head or more of South Poles, that after a few years, your best bulls will come from within your own herd. The cows that have adapted best to your environment and to your management are the bulls that you should be using instead of going out and paying $10,000 for a bull you know nothing about because he looks good.
Right, and that's also better than just doing like an artificial insemination and stuff like that.
Well, I don't have a problem with AI, and especially until you get your herd locked in and get those mama cows that's got great udders, because the bulls that we collect semen on are what we think are the best bulls we've produced there at Gentry, and I know a lot of the other farms are the same way. And that's one of the strong points of the South Pole is that we don't have just one or two good bulls. We have dozens of good bulls to choose from to use that meet the qualifications we're looking for. Yes, sir.
South Pole bull calf, steered, about a year old, rotated on grass, no annual supplements or anything like that. What would you expect that animal to be finishing at 26 to 30 months of age?
Well, most of the steers should finish close to their mother's mature weight. So if we were looking at a 1,050-pound cow, the steers should be finishing around 1,000, 1,100 pounds. Bulls that we use, should weigh about a third more than your cows. So if you're shooting for a 1,000-pound cow, you probably need to be using 14, 15, 1,600-pound bulls. But don't be using ton bulls. If you're using ton bulls, you're going to wind up with the cows that are 1,200, 1,400-pound cows, okay? As a general rule. I mean, there's always exceptions to every rule, but yes, sir. No, you okay?
So we got two shorthorn cow-calf pairs right out of Iowa. I'm a pretty firm believer in grass over grain. I got nothing to back that on. I'm new to the game. What's your thoughts on that, I guess?
On grass versus grain?
Yeah, like trying to run most of your cows on grass instead of throwing a bunch of grain at them, kind of going for that feedlot idea, going to more pasture, free range, not locked in, massive head counts, massive amounts of grain.
I'm a believer that grain wasn't fed, corn wasn't made to feed cows. Chickens and pigs, yeah, I guess, but cattle, if you got to feed them grain, I found out years ago when we were first starting, I had some steers that wasn't doing very good on grass, so I figured, well, I'll put them over here and give them a little corn. About all you're doing is confusing the gut. There's different bugs it takes to digest grass and digest grain. And so if you're ever going to put them on grain, you might as well go ahead and finish them out on grain.
That too, then.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to follow up to that. What's your ideal grass then to run your cattle on? Or do you have like a preferred mix? That's fescue, fistolium, orchard grass.
God put a lot of different seed in the ground. And through your management of mob grazing or rotational grazing, a lot of those, I haven't put any seed. The last seed I put out on my place was Red River crabgrass back in the late 80s. And it still comes back. And it took hold. I've got some pastures that when it gets hot in July, August, that's our main grass would be crabgrass. The fescue gets so hot, the fescue kind of dies off, the clover kind of dies off, and that's one of our mainstays. But we like vetch, and we like orchard grass. The clovers are all great. But what comes back, you don't want to spend a bunch of money trying to get fungus-free fescue because 4 or 5 years later it's going to be back to fungus anyway. So get the cattle. To my theory is get the cattle that can stand and thrive off of fescue, and those are going to be slick-haired cows. I don't know what breed they are. They need to be slick-haired because the body has to get rid of that excess heat that the fungus builds up in the cattle. And if they're slick-haired, they can get rid of it. But I don't believe in feeding corn at all. If you got to feed corn, take some cows to sale barn. You got too many cows.
Thank you. So he answered my question about the grass. Thank you. And so my husband and I we're from Washington State. We just moved to East Texas, to America, my husband says. So we now run, right? We now run just a little, 400-person homesteading group in the Palestine area to grow a community. And a lot of us aren't necessarily big farmers. A lot of us are homesteaders that are kind of prepping our home but also helping our community. Do you have any advice with us with the South Pole for if we just have a few cattle for just community and us, and would that be best to keep with the low weight with the South Pole, or do we want to try to go bigger since we only have a small farm?
Well, to me, you have a couple of options. Maybe you want to run some steers for somebody that has some steers, and make it seasonal. So, you run them when you got grass, and then in the fall maybe you either market them or either sell them off. But unless you got some winter grazing for a cow herd for cows, if you're going to try to build a cow, and also land, like I said, you're going to need. I don't know how many. We got off of 10 acres. If again, you're not going to be able to run many cows. But again, it might be an option to run steers during your growing season. You could run a few more steers, but cows are a different thing. You need a little more land, unless some of the neighbors had something that they would let you have cheap. Well, if you do that, you make them run a few cows. Yes. Yes, sir.
So I'm also from Alabama and have tried to find South Pole. They're not readily available. So would you just introduce the South Pole into your existing herd? Or how would you do that? How would you begin to change the genetics?
We have a breed up program so that get you a good South Pole bull and breed up, but it's the easiest way to do it. That way, if you got a good cow, she's still a good cow. If she might be a South Pole, if she's still a good cow, then breed up. Keep the half blood out of her and rest her it. And the next one will be 3/4, next one will be 7/8, which will be to the point where you can rest them as purebreds at that point. But yeah, the heifers are expensive when you find them now. People are willing to pay more for them, and I tell people don't pay too much just because they're a hot breed right now. Be patient. Don't try. That'd be my first advice: is be patient. We always have cattle come available that are already. That a lot of people are already raising some half bloods out of their own cows, and maybe you can pick up some half bloods at a little more than market price, or maybe pick up some 3/4 that somebody's been doing it for a while. But leave your options open and check on. We should have a bulletin board on the South Pole website that you can get on there and put, I'm looking for some heifers, and this is my address, and anybody in this area that's got something for sale. And also buy your cattle as close to home as you can, because they're already adapted to probably your type of grasses. If a neighbor's got them and he's got the same grasses you do, it's a lot easier for those cattle. They have no adapting to do.
So So before I get a bull to go dancing and shagging on the boulevard with my herd, can you walk us through how you might choose one?
Yeah, I'd go to somebody's farm and first thing I'd want to do is look at their production records. And those cows that have never missed, you get up in those 8, 10, 12-year-old cows that had a bull calf last year. Go out and look at her, pick out the ideal cow you want out of the ones that had a bull calf last year, and then go look at the bull calves. And if he is average or better, again, eyeballing is not everything. He don't have to be the biggest, tallest, longest, widest calf in the calf crop. If his mother has done that job year in, year out, then that's what you're wanting to buy.
Have you had any luck with breeding South Pole with dairy breeds?
No, I really haven't. A friend of mine had a dairy down in toward Gaston, Alabama, and he actually put a quarter centipole in his herd with a quarter Jersey and half Holstein, and he said that was the most profitable dairy cow he ran. But centipole they can be pretty dairy. They can be almost a dual-purpose breed. They'll have a lot of milk. A lot of those centipole cows will blow out the udders time they're 7, 8, 9 years old. That's one of the faults with the centipole.
Not so much for milk production like a dairy farm, but more for a homestead production where you're not getting 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 gallons a day. You're looking for 2 or 3.
I don't know anybody that's milked a South Pole, but for what you're talking about, I see no reason why it wouldn't work. We have, especially if you go out there and pick them and choose among the South Pole genetics, you can find cows that milk pretty heavy. If they milk too heavy, they come up open, and that's the Mother Nature will tell you. From a beef cow standpoint, that's what we're trying to produce is the most ideal beef cow. And so fertility and longevity, again, is the number one and number two money makers. Always has been, always will be. All right, anybody else? One more question here. First, let me say thank y'all for giving me the opportunity, old country boy that raised on a cotton farm. Like I said, I didn't know one end of a cow from another until I started studying in the 80s. And now then, I learn something every day. Every time I come to one of these conferences, I learn something. By the way, Miss Temple Grandin, she don't have a bigger fan than me. If you've ever seen the Temple Grandin story, me and my wife sat and cried like a couple of kids at the Lassie movie. But she is incredible, and you have the opportunity to learn here and some things from some people that are genuinely top of their game at this stuff. We have another question.
Yeah. Can the demeanor of your cows be strictly from breeding, or can your environment have some
The disposition of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. If you're crazy and using hot shots and dogs, you can make about anything wild if you want to. But if a heifer has no reason to be wild, and the rest of them in that group are gentle as kittens, then you need to get rid of the wild one. If she's got head issues, because she'll be an influence on the rest of them at some point in time, and then the second wildest will follow her, and then the third and so forth, that all of them be running through tapes and trying to run over you when you get in the pen with them. If you got a wild one, get rid of them. Pluck them out of there. Yes, sir. We had approximately 200 head of each breed when we started. We had 200 Herefords, 200 Red Angus, 200 Barzonas, a couple of hundred Centipole. We imported Centipole from the Virgin Islands 2 different times in the 90s. And you know what percentage wound up going into the South Pole? About 3%. 3% from each breed. No, I didn't do it on 60 acres. I was fortunate enough to buy my uncle's farm, my great-granddaddy Owen's farm. We now run about close to 400 acres. But again, that's not a lot of, we had other farmers we had rented at the time when we were developing the South Pole. Other people were grazing cattle for us. But I run about, I like to run about 60 to 70 mama cows on my farm now on a year-round basis. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, one more time.
Fly management. We're rotating every day, but we're still having a lot of fly issues.
Well, I just, we don't have a fly problem, but I don't know if the cows were suffering, I'd probably try to the point of where you got that many flies that they're suffering, then you might try to find some kind of natural rub or something to until you get the fly. If you got enough ground that you never get the fly cycle broke by moving your cows from one end of the farm to the other, maybe, and start back, so that they say a quarter of a mile or something like that is, if you can get that far away from the larvae, and but if you got dung beetles too, and getting those cow pies back into the soil as soon as possible, then the flies don't have a place to hatch out. But and then a cow that you can walk out and look at your cows, and the cows that do have a lot of flies on, probably their hormones are not right. Either that or they're probably retaining hair. But a slick-haired cow that's got the sebum, that oily streak down the center of their back, they may have a half a dozen flies on, but it shouldn't be anything, hurting them. I got about 5 more minutes. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to come over and share some information. And believe me, I don't have all the answers. I don't know, but I've paid for my lesson over the past 30 years and feel like that the South Pole are far above average as far as cow-calf operations go.
So, brand new, got some land from a grandfather, got 7 acres there at the house and 38 acres down the street. Want to get started with cattle. What's the recommended venture?
Well, everywhat it makes sense. And if you can come up on somebody's got some good half-bloods or some three-quarters, I talk about this, everybody every day to somebody, is full-blood versus purebred. Purebred cattle is where our good genetics come from to help us steer the gene pool going forward. Like the gentleman I was talking about ago, if you got a good cow, and she's a good cow, and she's got a good udder, and she's never missed every year, and you breed up a calf out of her, it's only going to help the South Pole. You see what I'm saying? If she's a good cow, then by the time you get up to having 1/8 or 1/16 of her blood in there, it's only going to help the genes that you got left. I use purebred bulls on my farm every day where I could use nothing but full-bloods. But full-bloods are fine, but you don't need to paint yourself into a corner genetically and never be afraid of using a good purebred bull. They're just as valuable to me, to the breed going forward, as a full-blood. But start with something that makes sense. Don't go out and pay $10,000 or $5,000 for a cow right now. If you better to get some half-bloods or three-quarters and breed up. Yes.
Have you collected any carcass data on the South Pole?
Yes, we did about as much carcass data in the development stage. Dr. Allen Williams was at Mississippi State, and we ran all the parts and pieces through and did a total carcass evaluation on them. We don't measure anything now because I know we're acceptable, and if we start measuring stuff, somebody's going to try to maximize it. So we're gonna be better, as good or better than any Hereford or Angus genetics out there as far as meat goes. We're not going to have huge ribeyes, but we're going to be shape. We pick for shape. We pick for, instead of a long shape, we wanted a round shape. So that's what we picked for in the South Pole. But yeah, we did carcass data on them, and they are very acceptable in the carcass end of it. But again, our specialty is fertility and longevity. And if we stick with those two things, we'll be so far ahead of the other breeds at that game in 10 years that nobody will ever catch us.
Hi. Thanks for coming. I'm trying to calculate how many hay bales I should collect for the winter from my field, because I want to put an electric fence around it maybe the second half of the year or the last part of the year. And so if I had 20 head over winter and the bales weighed 600 pounds, how many do you think I would need to get through 6 months of?
Well, like I said earlier.
And is that what you do 6 months when you calculate in Tennessee?
Yeah, probably so. But again, you figure the cow's weight, if they're 1,000-pound cows, they're going to be eating about 1,000 pound of hay a month every 4 to 5 weeks. So you can just pencil it out. The math won't change much. But you're going to need quite a few bales to get through 6 months. You actually, if you can cut that feeding hay months down to 3 months by balancing your numbers better, you're going to be, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, well, feed as little hay as you can. Unless you absolutely have to, don't feed hay. Balance your numbers so that you've got enough standing hay. That's the best way to let the cows harvest it, cheapest way. But if you can balance your numbers so that I feed hay for about 60 days because most of the time I've got too many cows or kept too many replacement heifers. It's my own fault. It's easy to do, but hay is expensive to feed. Okay, well, thank y'all very much for the opportunity. God bless. My telephone number is, if you'd like to put it into your phone and call me anytime, is 256-996-0777. And don't call me after midnight, please. But 256-996-0777. Yes. Yes, yeah. And anyway, if I can answer any questions to y'all anytime, please feel free to give me a call. And thank y'all again. Okay. And the real reason I drove over here from Alabama last night to be a part of this was for the money. No, I was just kidding. Actually, what I do with the money at these speaking events is I was in the 4-H and FFA. Every year they would have me back in Adamsburg Junior High School. And we're going to donate our funds today to the local chapters of the 4-H and FFA.